How's it? I am Mr. Willie19 coming at you here from the Second Amendment Show on the YT YouTube. This video is going to be a little reminder to you firearms folks out there about your after-action conduct. If, Lord forbid, please Lord, I hope nobody watching this video ever finds themselves in a situation where you have to actually fire upon another human being. I hope you never find yourself in a situation where you never have to even point your gun at another human being. But something, that happened to me recently, and it wasn't firearms related. That in combination with, I ran into an old friend of mine early today. A guy I've known in excess of 10 years. I haven't seen him in about a year. And it really brought the thought of after-action conduct to the forefront of my mind. He's the only civilian I've ever met who has actually been in a defensive shooting situation. And he's a highly trained guy. I've taken many courses with him, and I was there. I know for a fact that he has received high level training from some of the best instructors out there working right now. Instructors that they're certified to train instructors, military instructors, law enforcement instructors. These are instructors that train the instructors. You would recognize the names if I mention them, but I'm not here to do that. I'm here just to do a simple reminder about your after-action conduct. Not your immediate after-action drills where you get your firearm back close and check your surroundings thing, but your conduct subsequent to the fact. Said my buddy, who's a highly trained guy and has received training in how to conduct yourself after a shooting. And I understand the fog of war thing, and he obviously got caught up in it big time. Personally, I've never been there, done that, but I can certainly grasp the concept. He made a big boo-boo. He made several big boo-boos in his after-action conduct, and I'm going to relate his story here just as a reminder to everyone if, again, Lord forbid, you should ever find yourself in a defensive shooting situation. And I was there I went to numerous of the court appearances, sat in the courtroom and watched what was going on. This guy was somebody I trained with quite a bit. And so here's what went down with the guy. And please, everyone, learn a lesson from this. He was sitting home alone one night, watching television. This is like something you would read in a magazine or out of a book or something. He's alone watching television. Wife and daughter are out at the mall shopping, expected home any minute. And he hears a noise from down the hall. Sounds like it's coming from the guest bedroom. Sounds like the screen being moved. And he figures it's the neighbor's cat, whatever. So he goes down the hall and peeks his head in the doorway, and there he sees standing right in front of the window inside the house is an intruder. The guy's basically just getting up and brushing off his knees. And the guy stands up and sees my buddy sitting there, and my buddy presents himself into the vertical coffin, doorway. And immediately the bad guy comes up with a pistol. The dude's armed. And he lets one fly. I mean, that quick. No notice, no nothing. The guy reaches up and just shoots like that. Thank goodness the round hit about a foot too high and a foot to the right of my buddy's head, smashed into the door jamb. And so my friend did what, anyone would do instinctively. He got his head down. He ducked and he ran. He scurried diagonally across the hall from the guest room over to the master bedroom, where he retrieved his .45 in 1911 and a magazine, which he threw in his back pocket. And he took up defensive position on the side of the dresser. Well, it was about 10 seconds later, the bad guy presents himself in his own vertical coffin, in the doorway to the master bedroom. Yeah, I could say my friend also grabbed a flashlight. And he's holding the flashlight way up and out here. And he lights the guy up and says, "Freeze and drop your weapon or you will be shot." Well, the guy raises his gun right towards the flashlight, and as soon as the gun came up, it just was starting to move to, I guess, the bad guy's second thought. Who knows what he was thinking. He immediately raised the gun in the direction of the flashlight and then started to move towards where my buddy's voice was coming from. Again, he's behind the dresser, lighting the guy up like this. And as soon as it came up, before it even moved just barely towards the direction of my friend's voice, he let two fly. My buddy double tapped him and caught him center mass with two .45 caliber rounds. The bad guy turned and ran back towards the guest bedroom, towards, I guess, the window that he came in through. He never even made it into the guest bedroom. He fell in the doorway of that room. The bad guy lived. He made it. He actually lived and ended up being sentenced to 23 years in prison for attempted murder among a host of other charges. Anyway, so, you know, my friend falls up and is covering the guy, and the guy had dropped his gun. So my friend reached out and picked up the bad guy's gun and stuck it in his pocket. Okay? Yeah, you already see where I'm going with this, don't you? But because it was within the bad guy's reach, and that's fair. It's totally acceptable. Then my friend backpedaled back into the room and grabbed the cordless phone. He called 911, and here's where he did something right. He explained to the communications officer or dispatch, whoever he talked to, that there was a shooting and he was holding somebody at gunpoint. Please roll some units out here, and please roll fire rescue, because we do have a gunshot victim. And please inform your officers that I'm a good guy, and I am holding somebody at gunpoint. And as soon as they arrive here, I will holster my weapon and put my hands on top of my head, and I will obey all commands that they give, no questions, period. We already got one guy shot here. I don't want to get shot too. And they say it, I do it, that's that. And so, you know, he did the right thing there. He made it very clear to 911 what was going on, and that he was armed and he would disarm himself as soon as police arrived. So while the police are en route, my friend starts thinking about the fact that he just told them that he would holster his weapon and put his hands on top of his head. And he then thinks to himself, oh, shoot, I've got another gun in my pocket. A concealed weapon. I don't know exactly what his thinking was, but he figured he should get it off his person, because when I say he was going to holster his weapon, he was going to, what they call Mexican it. He was just going to put it into his belt where it was visible. But he had that gun in his pocket, so while still covering the guy, he backpedaled down the hallway and went to where there's this little bar that divides the dining room from the kitchen, and took the gun out of his pocket and set it on the bar to make it clearly visible. It was out there in the open for the responding officers to see, so there would be nothing hidden, no surprises. Then he goes back down the hall still covering the guy, waiting for police to arrive. And something I didn't mention, while he was in cover behind the dresser, as soon as he let two fly, it said that he had grabbed a second magazine, put it in his pocket. He dumped the magazine that was in his weapon, grabbed his fresh one, and topped off, which is fine. There's numerous different schools of thought. Some would agree, some would disagree, but whatever. He did a combat reload, and he topped off. And now he's thinking while he's covering this guy, remember, the guy's still alive. He's moaning and squirming. My friend's thinking, shit, I wonder if this guy has another gun on him. And he doesn't want to pat the guy down. You know, you don't want to get in reach of the bad guy. You don't want anything to go wrong. You get within kicking distance or grabbing distance or whatever. And then the guy's bleeding, of course, you know, diseases and such. He doesn't want to touch the guy or get close enough to be grabbed. But he's thinking, man, if he has another gun on him, if this guy, I mean, he's bleeding, but did I really hit him twice in the chest? Because he couldn't see. The guy was basically three-quarter rolled over. And he didn't, my friend in his thinking, so the story goes, didn't want to leave any ammunition laying around for this guy to get a hold of somehow. How? I don't know. While he's standing there covering the guy with a 45. But again, the fog of war kind of thing. He just wasn't thinking real clearly. So he backpedals while he's covering the guy into the bedroom and picks up the magazine that he had dumped and threw that in his pocket to replace the fresh one that he had stuck into his handgun. Well, the police arrive. Everything goes smoothly. Medics roll the bad guy away. Now, of course, my friend has to be debriefed afterwards. Has to give a statement down at the police department. And he gives a statement, and they ask him to tell the story again and again and again and again. They ask him to put it in writing, which he does. They ask him to write it again and again and again. He ended up giving like 8 or 10 different written versions. Well, 8 or 10 versions. Of course, there's going to be slight variations in every telling of the story, and that's to be expected. But there's also a representative from the DA's office there, an ADA, an assistant district attorney, who was picking apart every little tiny discrepancy, which I guess that's their job. But you tactical kind of folks, you already know this, what I'm saying. This is a simple reminder of some mistakes my buddy made. Let everything lay where it falls. Don't touch a frigging thing unless it can be used as a weapon and is within reach of the bad guy. That's perfectly fine. That's to get something out of reach of the bad guy. If God forbid you ever have to drop somebody, get any weapons out of their reach and keep them covered, and that's fine. But what my friend did by picking up this guy's weapon and moving it to the other side of the dang house, no, don't go, because this is evidence. You have to remember, this is all evidence. He picked up a gun and moved it to the other side of the house. Moving out of the bad guy's reach, or even putting it in his pocket and leaving it there, keeping it secured, would have been fine. But going someplace else and taking it back out of his pocket, now he's picked it up off the ground. He's moved its location not once to his pocket, but twice a distance away. And you can see where a lawyer might take this, right? And by picking up the magazine that he dumped, how's he going to prove his story, where he was sitting, where he took up cover, etc., etc. Don't touch anything. It's all evidence. You'll be tampering. Leave everything where it falls. Oh, and here's another thing. The whole back side of his house is all tile. This really fancy glazed tile. It's heated in the whole hallway, the master bedroom, the guest bedroom, the daughter's room. It's all tile. There's no carpet back there. While he went back to retrieve the magazine, apparently he kicked one of the spent shell casings that sent it way off to some place where if he fired the 2 shots from where he said he was, that spent shell casing shouldn't have been where they found it. So the moral of the story is don't touch anything, because it will corroborate what you have to say. It will prove that you're telling the truth. That, where you dumped your magazine, where you were standing, where you fired, or kneeling, in my buddy's case, by where the casings ended up. Things like that. Don't touch anything. Leave it where it sits. In addition to that, when you have to go be debriefed and give your statement, don't say anything. Again, this is a highly trained guy. He's probably, well, there's no probably about it. He is definitely more highly trained than your average cop on the street. Not all police officers, of course, but your average cop on the street whose only training they've had is their post, their academy training. He's definitely more highly trained than them, and he should have known better, totally. But that fog of war kind of thing got to him. He wasn't thinking clearly. And these are things that you can actually practice. You can do role playing. You can go out in the woods and pretend that a fallen log is the bad guy. And how are you going to kick the pine cone away if it's the weapon that he dropped? And pretend to get on the phone and what you're going to, that kind of thing. It's do whatever training you have to do to reinforce your after-action conduct. Because my bud dropped the ball bad on this time. It ended up costing him nearly $50,000. As I recall, it was about $46,000 in legal fees. The family tried to sue him civilly, which they were unsuccessful at. And it was justified a good shoot. It was a justifiable shooting. It was ruled, no charges were brought against him. It took him almost 2 years to get his gun back after he'd been impounded as evidence. But, after so many retellings of the story when he's being debriefed, he finally said, look, you guys are obviously trying to get me in a gotcha game. Gotcha in a lie. Trying to get me in a gotcha game. I'd like to go home. Am I free to leave? And they said, yeah, sure. We'll be contacting you in a couple hours, because by now it was the next day. This went on for 6-7 hours or something, the debriefing, before he finally said, I'd like to go, and I want to go get myself a lawyer. Which brings me to the next point. In your after-action conduct, be honest. Tell the police what is true. Look, I'm not one of those idiots who watches too much TV or too many movies, who watches, I don't watch TV myself that much, CSI. I'm not one of those idiots who watches too much of that kind of crap and actually thinks they know what they're talking about. Get a professional to speak for you, okay? Keep your mouth shut. Don't dig yourself a hole that you don't need to dig. Retain legal counsel. Have someone else speak for you. And because you're not trained in interpretation and application of law. You're not a lawyer, and if you do happen to be a lawyer, someone who's watching this, you know the old saying, the lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. Retain legal counsel. Get legal representation. Have that person speak for you. So you don't dig yourself a hole the way my buddy did. Again, it all came out in the end with the exception of he had to dig into his retirement funds and sell off a jet ski and a motorcycle to pay for his legal fees. Because it can make all the difference in the world. Don't touch anything in your after-action conduct unless it's an immediate emergency where the bad guy can get a hold of it. Don't touch it and don't speak. Because it can make all the world of difference. It can be the difference between you coming out smelling like a rose or being screwed, blued, and tattooed and charged with a crime. So, anyway, just a quick little reminder. Again, I'm sure most of you tactical kind of folks out there already know this, but it's good to be reminded of, because I know for an absolute fact that a very, very highly trained guy who has been trained in after-action, not only after-action drills, but after-action conduct, who should have known better, and the fog of war clouded his thinking for a moment, and he blew it. It ended up costing him only financially, thank goodness. Could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse. So, just a little reminder from Mr. Willie to you. And again, I pray, it's my fondest wish that anyone watching this, that you never find yourself in a situation where you have to fire upon another human being. I hope you never find yourself in a situation where you ever even point a loaded gun at another human being. Any gun, loaded or not. Never have to point one at somebody. And so, just a little something to keep in mind. I am Mr. Willie 19, coming at you here from the Second Amendment Show on the YT YouTube. And as always, I am hoping that this video finds you and finds you well. Cheers.